Hello, and welcome to a Modern WAN Solution, presented to you by Alkira and SDX Central. Today's presenters are myself, Ashley Wiesner, a studios editor at SDX Central, Atif Khan, the co-founder and CTO of Alkira, and David Klebanov, head of product marketing at Alkira. The cloud era is here, and a reported 97% of organizations worldwide use cloud services. The cloud environment has empowered enterprises with a more scalable and agile network. However, just because the cloud era is here doesn't always mean cloud migration is simple. Legacy network infrastructures have not evolved with the cloud, leaving the migration process complex, costly, and time-consuming. WAN and other cloud networking solutions continue to fall short, with supporting technologies remaining too complex or simply not suited for the cloud. Clean sheet thinking and innovation will drive a modern WAN solution designed for the cloud era. In today's webinar, I will cover challenges of the cloud era, complexities of traditional WAN, the role of clean sheet thinking on innovation, and a simple WAN migration solution. Following that, Atif and David will discuss a modern WAN solution. The cloud era comes with unique networking challenges, particularly when legacy networking technologies are still being utilized. Some of the top challenges of this transitionary cloud era are bandwidth. Bandwidth is limited and bandwidth requirements have increased. Traditional MPLS and the backhauling of data is no longer conducive to modern networking. Agility. New sites take a substantial amount of time to get up and running. Scalability. This ties back to the issue of agility. Networks cannot ebb and flow with enterprise needs if building and connecting sites is time intensive. Security. Secure and optimized access to the cloud is critical, and cloud networking via MPLS is not designed for that level of visibility and control. And finally, migration. A 2017 study indicated almost 60% of enterprises going through migration said it was more difficult than anticipated. They cited security challenges, slow data migration, and extensive time spent troubleshooting as some of the top migration challenges. As I mentioned, these challenges stem from legacy networking technologies, such as traditional WAN. WAN remains expensive, complex, and time-consuming to build and secure. Traditional WAN is expensive to maintain, as it requires a large upfront investment because of the necessary physical appliances and necessary specialists required to manage it. The infrastructure itself is complex and difficult to maintain. These complexities make network management and security extremely time-consuming, thanks to the various device connections and infrastructure sprawl. Perhaps one of the biggest challenges traditional WAN faces in the cloud era is its unpredictable application and network performance. Bandwidth issues are to blame here, as it impacts application rollouts and performance and networking capabilities. And then there is security, which remains a huge challenge. WAN often relies on individual and isolated security tools to protect the network because the solutions are overlaid, creating a complex network that leads to security gaps and latency issues. This results in breaches, viruses, and an overall compromised network. A modern WAN requires a ground-up approach and clean sheet thinking. Networks should be built in the cloud on demand. This requires a clean sheet approach to how networks are built specifically for the cloud era. A modern WAN is designed with these characteristics. The cloud is central to how WAN functions and networks are built. Modern WAN is created for and optimized for high speeds and bandwidth requirements. It is built to be highly available. It is designed with security built in. And modern WAN offers automatic scaling. Built with these characteristics in mind, modern WAN can reduce complexity and cost and allow enterprises to experience the full flexibility of the cloud. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, migration is one of the biggest challenges that accompanies WAN. To be competitive in the cloud era, modern WAN must address this. Modern WAN must come with a simple WAN migration solution. This solution must be agile. If a connection is needed, that connectivity should occur within minutes. It should offer routing controls. This will help avoid loops and offer visibility. It should be ubiquitous, a universal solution for connectivity no matter the connection. And it should offer unparalleled connection across sites, data centers, and clouds. This brings us to Atif and David's expertise, but first, a few key takeaways. First, the cloud era brings a unique set of challenges to networking. Traditional WAN is overly complex for the cloud era. A clean sheet approach will drive innovation and should be used when rethinking cloud networking. WAN migration is challenging, and modern WAN migration solutions must be modern in nature. And finally, change is needed in the cloud networking space, and a new WAN solution is necessary. Which brings us to today's speakers, Atif and David, who will talk more about WAN in the cloud era and Alkira's new solution.
Well, thank you very much, Ashley, for the introduction. It's indeed you have provided very insightful views into what it takes to build a modern wide area networking, and especially how this all plays out in the cloud era that we're in. So today, myself and Atif, we will take you through some of the historical considerations, how we arrived where we are. We're going to look at some of the existing WAN solutions and how we utilize the Alkira solution. Obviously, explain to you a bit more about the Alkira solution so you have a good understanding how that all works out for the wide area networks and for the clouds. So let's step into this. Before we kind of dive into the details, it's very important to understand is that the application landscape has been changing, right? It has been changing for a long time now. And we all realize is that all of these application transitions have really put a new set of requirements on the networking and security infrastructure. So if we go through the motions, we all know that data center applications were, or the on-premise data center applications were the predominant way that applications were deployed back in the days. Then the application landscape has evolved into more of a hybrid approach, where we are talking about applications that are distributed across on-premise and cloud infrastructure. And eventually we're talking about the applications that are moving beyond a single cloud deployments into the multi-cloud deployments, even though, of course, we're still seeing quite a lot of single cloud deployment, but we are seeing quite a fair share of multi-cloud deployments and even a push into the cloud computing environments. So all of these have been kind of a trajectory of a change that occurred within the applications. And as I mentioned, as these transitions occur, the networking and security has to cope with it. So how has the networking and security traditionally coped with this? So in the traditional data center deployment days, and we recognize is that there is a fair amount of organizations out there that are still leveraging this model, even though we see this model as being an obsolete model. We are certainly seeing that there's a fair share of organizations that are still doing it this way. Right? But back in the days, the applications are deployed in a data center. The cloud, if exists at all, is something that is anchored on the data center. The internet exit for SaaS applications, if exist, anchored on the data center, and that drives also the centralization of the security perimeter at the data center. Now, on the wide area network side, we have the physical wide area networks, which back in the days were primarily the MPLS network, right? Or maybe flavors of an IPVPN networks that were connectivity medium between the remote sites, between multiple remote sites, and between remote sites and the data centers, right? So data centers is the crown jewels, everything flows through the data center. And obviously that model carried, a degree of suboptimality, which gave birth to the next phase of an evolution of network, where network and security are following the decentralization of the applications. And that's when you see the application landscape is distributed across the data centers and the clouds. And on the wide area network side, we really see the birth of the software-defined approaches. And for the WAN, it's a software-defined WAN or SD-WAN, right? And both in Atif in our previous life have been part of a startup that really gave birth to SD-WAN, which was Viptela. I bet Atif has a lot of insight on that. Atif, you want to share a little bit about kind of the the SD-WAN the SD-WAN journey?
Absolutely, David. Thanks for the intro. Um, you know, the WAN of today is no more about connecting sites and branches to the data center. That used to be the case because all the traffic used to be between sites to data centers because applications resided in the data center, um, and there was data center to data center connectivity, or data centers could be in different locations. So WAN had one and only purpose, which was to connect those sites.
Right.
But during the last decade or so, as you have mentioned, because of the cloud era and enterprises adopting cloud, now that's no more the case. So you don't have like a majority of your traffic from sites to data centers. And in fact, it's shown based on many reports from different analysts, different reports out there, that majority of the traffic now is from the users to data or applications which is residing off premise, maybe in public clouds,
Right.
maybe SaaS applications which you need to access outside of your enterprise environment. So the WAN now needs to evolve for the cloud era,
Right.
and I can talk on and on about like MPLS and SD-WAN, but I'll let you cover a few more slides, and I'll jump
Right,
in.
right. Yeah, exactly. We'll get to this in just 1 minute,
Right.
because we know that SD-WAN is a motion that exists in the market, and we know a lot of people are considering SD-WAN or deploying SD-WAN as their wide area networking solution. And we'll talk about what that means in a few short minutes. But for those who are doing SD-WAN, we're really seeing how SD-WAN provided the benefits of diversifying the transports of MPLS and internet and 4G and doing application level routing, and a lot of kind of cool things came along with SD-WAN, but it created a complex environment where the distribution of an applications across on-premise data centers, clouds, SaaS applications really forced the kind of a very distributed nature of networking and a very distributed nature of a security perimeter around this, right? We have different security enforcement points, some in traditional data centers, some in co-locations, if that's the way you connect to the cloud, some in a cloud native form inside the cloud, some as a secure internet gateway for SaaS applications. So really very distributed security landscape that is kind of hard to manage. So SD-WAN brought a lot of kind of goodness into this, but also brought some degree of complexity, which is exactly to the point that you mentioned, Atif, is that we all recognize is that we have to make yet another step and yet another change in order to bring the networking and security and wide area networking and security and the cloud networking and security into this new paradigm where the applications are really gravitating towards the data center and towards the clouds from the on-premise data centers, and we need the networking and security to step up and to be aligned with that motion that the applications and the data has gone through, right? And that means that we don't want to do what the compute has done, but we want to take the characteristics of what the public clouds have done for the compute and say, wouldn't that be nice if we could take these characteristics and apply this on the networking and security infrastructure that connects your branches together and connect your branches and data centers together, which is more of a traditional wide area networking, but also extends into the cloud inside a single cloud or inside multiple clouds, access to the cloud, access inside the cloud, or connectivity inside the cloud. So all of these kind of principles drive us to the notion of as a service as being the driver to see that this network and security infrastructure matches what the clouds have delivered for compute, right? And then of the nature of the fact that this is delivered in a cloud is given us the advantage of an integrated cloud access. It's not really accessing the cloud, it's in the cloud, it's born in the cloud, it's living in the cloud, right? You don't need technologies to access the cloud and then do it yourself in the cloud. This is the cloud experience is an end-to-end experience, whether that's the traffic comes from the branch or whether the traffic goes inside the cloud between different VPCs and VNets. the idea that the cloud is fully integrated into this and not something that you're connecting to, right? And by the virtue of that, the security perimeter is also integrated, and it becomes a one single motion of networking and security delivered in the cloud that really accommodates that sprawl of application and data and connectivity mechanisms, which really brings us to the fact that we need to do this differently, which is what Alkira is doing. And I think, Atif, you were kind of leading to that point, that here's what we're doing. So I'll let you provide some insight into how are we solving this problem, which is not an easy problem to solve, right? I'll let you take a stab at this.
Yeah, no, David, you covered a lot, and as you said, the WAN of today, it has to evolve for the cloud era, and it's not about just connectivity. And just to take a step back, uh, it is cloud networking, cloud connectivity, securing the cloud. All of that becomes a centerpiece of the WAN of today. And how do you address the needs of the WAN of today, is the question here. So as I was mentioning, we have come a long ways as far as the cloud is concerned in the last decade. And here, if you look at what we are doing, is we are building a global unified cloud network, which connects, which is not just about connectivity, even though it connects all these clouds, which could be different clouds, could be in the same cloud in different regions. And then also it connects, obviously you still have to connect your on-prem locations, your data centers, you have to bring in users into the cloud. So how do you address that with one way of doing it, one ubiquitous cloud network, which solves all of those requirements, or meets all those requirements. So here, what we have done is, as you were mentioning, we see that the industry is moving towards as a service consumption model. And here we have tried to bring, or we have brought as a service to networking. So we allow our customers to be able to consume or to build this global network or a cloud network on demand as a service. We provide network infrastructure which exists in the cloud, and we allow customers to use that infrastructure to build a comprehensive global network which connects to any endpoint. And any endpoint could be, when I say any endpoint, it could be any site, it could be any cloud, it could be data center, it could be remote user coming in directly from the end device. Uh, uh, so so that is about one piece, which is about connectivity. And then when you build a global network, it's one thing building the network, it's another thing running the network. So to run the network, there's much more that is needed. So you need all the capabilities to do all your day two operations. So you need complete visibility, you need your troubleshooting tools, you need to be able to figure out, have all the visibility, like where the routes are coming from, application level visibility, flow level visibility. If you have to do any troubleshooting, you have to have all those tools available for you. So here it's an infrastructure. You use that infrastructure to build your network as a service. It has the characteristics of the modern era cloud backbone, or the cloud WAN, which is, I like to say that some of those characteristics are agility, on-demand scale. It has to be able to scale on demand. You should be able to add capacity to it wherever you need to add capacity and whenever you need to add capacity. Another characteristic is high availability. It has to be very highly available. Nowadays, you cannot afford your WAN or your network to be down for any amount of time. So it has to be very highly available. So the infrastructure that you're building your cloud network on has to be very, very highly available. And it has to be on top of everything, it has to provide ubiquitous access. And when I say ubiquitous access or ubiquitous connectivity, it has to handle on-prem, cloud, distributed, let's say, remote workforce, all of that in one way. And all of these are just like on-prem, cloud, distributed remote access, or remote workforce. These are just endpoints. And then above all, security. So security has to be built into this type of a network or a WAN. And again, I can't emphasize more on how important end-to-end visibility and controls are. So you have to be able to have complete visibility. You have to have controls. And I can get into more details in a bit later on the controls, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be available, that needs to be supported by this type of an offering for a true WAN to be operational.
Right, right. Yeah, that's great. Like I mentioned, and I fully agree with you. Building networks is not easy. You gotta have expertise to build networks, right? And I think the way that you describe this, which is perfect, right, is that people are used to a very different mindset of what it takes to build a network. And when you talk about wide area network, there's obviously more expertise. But when you say that that wide area network is not just living in isolation, it needs to be catering to the cloud needs as well. All of a sudden, it becomes not such an easy challenge. And then when you bring services into this, that becomes a very, very, very challenging, right? I think we talked about the security kind of being distributed around in how you would integrate that in SD-WAN world, but we really made it simple in here, right? You can maybe touch on like what does it take for a person to to say, you know what, I need a stateful firewall inspection between these two VPCs, or worse than that, this VPC and that VNet, or even worse than that, this VPC, VNet, and that remote user that is connecting. Like, how hard is it?
So today, like if you have to spin up let's say a firewall in the cloud to meet those requirements that you just mentioned, it's you have to learn like all the underlying constructs of that cloud. How are you going to bring up instantiate a firewall? If you have to steer certain type of traffic through the firewall, how are you going to do it? If there are certain bandwidth requirements, like what is the underlying cloud infrastructure that you're going to use also to meet those capacity or the bandwidth requirements also. So it becomes very, very complicated very quickly, because now if you have multiple clouds also, each cloud is done very differently, and then you have to learn each cloud, and before you know, it's a tedious it's quite tedious to bring up and then maintain and manage. And then you have to, like, if you have to scale those services, let's say auto scale those up or down, what does it take? You have to learn all of that stuff, and just steering traffic and making sure that if you scale those services, just to make sure that the flows are symmetric. If these are stateful services, right? So a flow that goes through one firewall should it has to be symmetric. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. And what we have done here is we provide a platform, and we take that, abstract all of that from the end customer. You just put in your requirements into the portal through which you consume this service, and all of that happens automatically for the customer. So why do you have to know, like, oh, if I have to spin up let's say a Palo Alto firewall in AWS to meet my certain use cases, then if I have to go and spin up or have a requirement, similar requirement for a different cloud, why do I have to go and do things differently and stuff? Why can't I have one way of doing it? Why can't I have a standardized way of doing it? So that's where, like, this platform comes into the picture. And you just put in your requirements, and on top we have a very easy to manage, easy to navigate policy infrastructure, which allows you to define your intent-based policies. And intent-based policies is a very misused word in the industry, as we have seen in the past. So here, basically, when I say intent-based policies, it's like you decide like what type of traffic or what's your policy, meaning that traffic which is bound for internet from, let's say, from the cloud needs to go through the firewall, but maybe within the cloud traffic doesn't need to go through the firewall. So that's your intent, right? So that's what you define at that level, and the platform makes it happen. So
Right.
simplifying all of that stuff, providing all the rich functionality, because yeah, you can simplify it, but sometimes when you simplify, you lose your rich functionality.
Yes.
So keeping a balance between rich functionality, being able to address all those complex use cases, but at the same time keeping it very simple, one way of doing networking and security services across clouds, across on-prem, making sure that there's complete visibility, end-to-end visibility, and full controls from the policy layer level. That's like the
Yeah.
table stakes here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree with you, Atif. I think we all have seen how this played out before solution like the Alkira Network Cloud, right? Because the world was kind of simpler when the security was in a data center, because then everything is backhauling to data center. But those days are gone. We all know that the latency penalty you're paying for data center backhaul is too much. And if you think about what it takes to deploy this in an SD-WAN world, then you start dealing with control policies, data policies, traffic symmetry becomes very complicated really fast. So these are all great points. And what I want to transition to now is I want to look at this is great, right? But how do I get here, right? It's like I'm not there. I'm a customer, right? I'm not quite there. I love this idea of this uniformity and an abstraction layer, and my connectivity and security is integrated, and network services are delivered, and full visibility and control. And that's great. That stretches across my on-premise environment and my cloud environments exactly alike. And I don't need to kind of re-architect my network when a new cloud requirement comes in, because it's all done in a very uniform, ubiquitous way. So that's all great, but how do I get there, right? So we're going to walk through a couple of interesting things in here, and we're going to talk about. We'll kick off with MPLS, because we realize for the wide area network, and for the longest time, MPLS and still is a choice of connectivity for many organizations, right? And many customers that we're working with, the starting point for their wide area networking and for the way that they're accessing the cloud is in fact MPLS. And it really maps to that very traditional model that we talked about, where you have this MPLS delivered service, all of your branches and data centers connect to it. Then you have the clouds hanging off of the data center. Maybe your service provider delivers you, a private service to connect to your cloud workloads from within the MPLS network, and that is kind of given to you as a service from the provider. But you are tied into this MPLS service, right? And what we're seeing here is that we're seeing a transition, a migration motion from the MPLS network into the Alkira solution, with all the kind of the cool stuff that we talked about. And obviously, we're not going to go step by step as far as how the transition occurs, but just to set the stage here is that it's a gradual transition. You don't kind of jump into this and say, I'm going to rip and replace my MPLS network day one and just replace everything with Alkira. Nobody does this. There's really no opportunity for an IT organization to do that. So how do you do that in a gradual manner? How do you peel off sites from an MPLS network into this new cloud network to get all of these advantages that you are getting? And the idea behind this, and I know, Atif, you've spent a lot of time doing exactly that, getting off an MPLS network into a better solutions. And the idea was really, connecting some anchor points, which is data center, peeling off, migrating the sites slowly as your business allows you to do, or aggressively if that's what you can do, and peeling them off into the connecting them into the Alkira's backbone, and then migrating the cloud and SaaS access. And eventually, some point down the road, it's basically when your entire environment has transitioned from MPLS into the Alkira environment, you have no more need for MPLS, and depends sort of on how long the transition took. Eventually, you decommission MPLS, and then you are living now within this kind of a world of Alkira, where as we talked about, right? And some of the advantages, of course, is that it's really fast time to service compared to how you were doing this on MPLS, because you don't have to wait for circuit deliveries and things like that. The connectivity into the Alkira could be done really fast. There's no contracts that you kind of lock yourself into, because this could be a subscription, but also pay as you go model, right? You have the bandwidth on demand that you mentioned, that it's basically a virtually unlimited capacity with service SLAs, just like you had kind of strong SLAs with the MPLS providers. You have the SLAs within Alkira, because Alkira now handles your entire network and security infrastructure. And along those lines, you have an integrated cloud networking, wide area networking, and its security into this one kind of cohesive platform, right? I think you spend a lot of time doing exactly this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So just imagine like bringing up a global high speed, low latency, or predictable latency network, or a cloud backbone, or a backbone which just doesn't cater cloud, but it also caters on-prem data centers, whatnot, within like minutes. That's just like never been done before. And with just a few clicks of like a few mouse clicks, you can bring it all up. And it's with built-in segmentation. It's fully routed, fully meshed, or full meshed connectivity. And this backbone is it's elastic. You can stretch it to any place on the globe. So that's like it's just never happened before, and it's a new way of doing networking.
Right.
And when you come up with these backbones, or these cloud networks, or these, especially when they connect to multiple sites and multiple clouds, um, you're not going to have like a always a greenfield type for deployment, where customer is just going to rip and replace like their existing networks. So you have to you have to uh, always be able to support brownfield deployments. And when I say brownfield deployments, you have like existing WAN, you have existing network, and then you are bringing up this new setup. And also, like, especially when you connect, like, let's say multiple data centers or multiple sites, it just becomes like it's not as straightforward as some people make it look like from a solution perspective, because you can very easily run into issues, especially when it's a brownfield deployment. And we have seen that based on our many years of experience deploying large scale networks. You can easily bring down networks by causing loops and whatnot. So you need to have a solution that addresses all those issues, that provides all those controls, how to bring in or how to deploy brownfield environments. You have to have controls and visibility, routing controls, all of that stuff, where you have to be able to control all the routes, like what routes, what prefixes you are going to be sending to where, whatnot. So that is the key. Otherwise, if somebody says that, oh, I can just have a solution which just provides this connectivity. Connectivity is, again, bringing up connectivity is one thing. Addressing all these use cases is another, and having a comprehensive solution which addresses all that, but at the same time it allows you to do it at a very fast pace, is what we have built. So we
Right.
have, based on our experience, we have addressed all those things, and we have made sure that this is like ready for prime time deployment.
Right. Yeah, and you touched some great points, right? You touched on kind of some of the complexities that people may not be aware of when they're transitioning off of their traditional infrastructure to kind of something else, right? And we hear about a lot of kind of corner cases. For example, one thing that I can add to what you said is, for example, NATing, network address translation. Right, it's something that sometimes is taken for granted, right? It's like, okay, but when you start incorporating your clouds into your single connectivity domain, all of a sudden you start discovering all these 10/8 routes that were instantiated that nobody really paid attention. How will that all play out when it's all part of one cohesive infrastructure? So it was much easier to think about that as when I had my WAN island and I had my cloud island, and they're not really connected together, so I have no problem, right? But when you start kind of thinking about this is no longer WAN and cloud, this is one cohesive network. All of a sudden you start caring about things that were not on top of your list and may seem really basic for a network engineer, like how do I cater to overlapping IP addresses, be that cloud infrastructure, or maybe I'm doing M&As and I'm onboarding some other organization and have an overlapping IP address. Wasn't really maybe on top of everybody's list, but when you start moving away from sort of legacy to the new, all of a sudden it was like, oh, this whole stuff that I haven't thought about and wasn't on my priority list, and all of a sudden you kind of need controls for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, as you said, like here at Alkira, we have paid like special, and I say that special attention to migration use cases. And this is where like customers transition from existing to Alkira. So that's like it's something that's very, very important part of it.
Yes, I know that wide area networking is deeply ingrained in our DNA. So one another kind of additional case that we sometimes see, and I wouldn't say it's a very predominant case, but we know that co-locations have been playing a very significant role in cloud adoption. Many enterprises have gone to co-locations in order to provide cloud connectivity, because all the cloud providers offer this high-speed cross connects, be those direct connects, express route. Every cloud provider calls them differently, but bottom line, it's this high-speed interconnect from these co-locations, your anchor points, into the cloud, and then connecting to the cloud, right? And some of the organizations have taken this concept of co-locations and said, well, if my co-location provides me connectivity to the cloud, can I not build my wide area network with co-locations? And it basically created sort of like your own mesh of co-locations where you go and you establish a footprint at a co-location facility, and you kind of rent some rack space, you put some routers in there and firewalls in there, and you bring your WAN circuits in there, and you buy the cross connects to the cloud from there, and then on the global scale, your co-locations start kind of delivering this long haul connectivity. And that was another kind of a flavor of how people were treating co-locations, in addition to being these cloud on-ramps into their cloud footprint, right? And we've encountered those. I don't know if you would agree with that, Atif, but I don't think it's a very predominant case, but we see those once in a while, right?
Yes, we do see those once in a while, and it's do it yourself. You have to. It's capex intensive way of doing it. You have to put in a lot of effort. You have to take care of all of it yourself, all of it from routing perspective, putting in other services in co-locations. And we're seeing we have customers who are pretty much going with the Alkira's CSX model, or deploying CXPs and moving away from the co-location deployments in certain cases. So yes, you're right. Like we do see that, but why do I have to like build those expensive like networks using co-locations when I can just build my network, start small, and I can grow as I need to grow, and I only pay for what I use and for as long as I use it for. So it's a very different model going forward, and that's like what we see like resonating very, very well with our customers.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes. So we definitely, there's a fair share of co-locations out there that have been used for cloud on-ramps and for the wide area networks, but we're certainly, I fully agree with you. We're definitely seeing a motion of people reconsidering and rethinking their sort of motion of whether I need a co-location. Co-location serves a certain purpose. It may be suitable. We support co-locations connecting to us, right? So there's some use cases that yes, co-locations provide value. We welcome co-locations into the Alkira backbone, into the Alkira solution as a connectivity mechanism. But organizations are also considering whether that's a right choice for doing this opportunistically somewhere, or whether it's no longer the case, right? So that's great. And let me just jump on a last step in this, is that the software defined WANs, right? So we all know SD-WANs has really exploded in popularity in the last years, right? And like we mentioned, we've all been part of kind of the SD-WAN story from the get-go, right? So what is the relationship between SD-WAN and Alkira, right? So SD-WAN still has a purpose, right? There's SD-WANs out there. People have deployed SD-WANs from single provider, from multiple providers, and so SD-WAN is certainly there. So do we coexist with SD-WAN? Do we replace SD-WAN? It's a bit of a kind of a give and take, right? And we have kind of two cases for you here. The first case is when you have the single SD-WAN fabric, the single global SD-WAN fabric that you have deployed within your organization already, and you have some sites on it and data centers on it and campuses. You already kind of established the footprint. And now you're saying, okay, now I need to expand to the cloud. So do I use an SD-WAN cloud on-ramp, or do I just seamlessly extend my SD-WAN fabric through the Alkira solution and extend it to the cloud? So both solutions work kind of jointly, where you have the branch-to-branch connectivity handled by the SD-WAN, and cloud networking and access to the cloud and network services associated with that are handled through the Alkira backbone, right? And in here, one thing that you can notice is that if you are on SD-WAN sort of solution, what you see on the right-hand side, you can see those sites and users that are connecting directly to Alkira. So the fact that you have an SD-WAN network already deployed, and you love the Alkira story, and you want to leverage Alkira for your cloud networking needs and the network services needs, but you still want to grow your footprint, you can continue growing your footprint by natively connecting things into the Alkira, bypassing the SD-WAN. So basically your SD-WAN deployment is what it is today, and then you keep on growing your environment with direct connections into the Alkira Cloud Exchange points. And one of the kind of a big value in that is that you don't have to upgrade your router. You don't have to replace your router. Any router that exists on your remote site can now be seamlessly connected into the Alkira. So you can basically significantly extend the lifetime of your CPE, because you no longer need to run the SD-WAN code, upgrade that, so it becomes kind of compatible with an SD-WAN fabric. So you have kind of a convergence of these two things, of an SD-WAN fabric that was already deployed and can be integrated into the Alkira, and you have the kind of a growth pattern of sites and users and whatnot that are connecting directly into Alkira, that you can bypass sort of the SD-WAN journey for those, and both can work at the same time, right? So I don't know, Atif, I bet you want to touch a little bit about how SD-WAN is actually integrated into the Alkira Cloud Exchange points.
Yeah, before I talk about the integration part, I'll just say that when it comes to cloud networking, SD-WAN cloud on-ramps, I always say that that's a piece of cloud networking that doesn't make up the whole cloud networking part. So on-ramp is just like if I need in a given region, if I need connectivity into my let's say I have a bunch of VPCs in one region, AWS VPCs, I can instantiate a transit VPC and extend my SD-WAN fabric into the transit VPC, and then integrate with TGW or whatnot to access or connect to multiple VPCs. That's part of it. That's not the cloud networking. So when people say that, oh, I can build my cloud network using SD-WAN, yes, you can have like basic connectivity, but that's not. So when you have multiple clouds, when you have multiple regions, you have to replicate all of this in different regions, in different clouds, and then all of this, like how do you route between clouds if there are traffic routing requirements between clouds? How do you deploy services? How do you take traffic through firewalls in the middle? So it's all do it yourself, and it becomes like very, very, again, tedious and complicated before you know. It's all do it yourself. And there are many things which you can't even achieve with that, because these are different islands of different clouds that you're connecting through your SD-WAN fabric. And that's, again, it's not cloud networking, it's a piece of cloud networking. And I always say that SD-WAN was the step in the right direction. It's not like the end solution. And now coming to integration, SD-WAN from the branch perspective, from the WAN perspective, SD-WAN relied on basically building a fabric on top of any transport. That was like how we started. Why does it matter underneath if it's MPLS or internet, or I could have multiple transports, and would build a virtual fabric on top, and then based on the application requirements, you could choose the transport your application traffic was going to go on. um, many enterprises, especially the larger enterprises, they haven't been able to get rid of MPLS as one of the transports, because MPLS provides SLAs, and for the traffic which requires low latency and or predictable latency, people still use MPLS as one of the transports. So with cloud backbones, you don't necessarily need that expensive low speed MPLS, because now I can get like better performance, better throughput, bandwidth, predictable latency, and with the solution like Alkira, we provide SLAs also. So why do I need like MPLS as one of the transports for my SD-WAN? I can have global connectivity over very high capacity cloud network, and just build it that way. So that's where maybe in certain cases what we are seeing is you can still keep your SD-WAN if you have deployed SD-WAN, but you use it to connect to the closest location where you can onboard into, let's say, the Alkira cloud. And we provide the cloud backbone, which is high speed SLAs, also predictable latency, and it's global. And then obviously we are coming from the cloud angle, so it's a cloud focused a network, and it's multi-cloud focused network, and we abstract all of that complexity from the customers, and you can build like a virtual network or virtual fabric, which connects all your end locations, on-prem, data centers, campuses, sites, clouds, together through this Alkira's
Got
cloud
it.
network.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I know that in some cases we're encountering some kind of unique SD-WAN environments where you have not a global SD-WAN fabric, but you have multiple SD-WAN fabric, regionalized SD-WAN fabrics. It could come because you wanted to separate your SD-WAN domains. It could be because you have acquired another company, it was an M&A, and you just kind of inherited another SD-WAN island of a same vendor that you're deploying, or a different SD-WAN vendor that you're deploying. So all of these, they become kind of a part of the capabilities that we have to integrate SD-WANs into the one backbone. And again, sites that are not on SD-WAN can continue happily coexist with sites that are on SD-WAN. So everybody has kind of the path to leveraging both connectivity through SD-WAN to Alkira, or natively from remote locations to Alkira, bypassing sort of like the hurdles of what it takes to get SD-WAN operational from hardware upgrades and learning curve and whatnot. All right. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to really quickly touch before we wrap up. I really wanted to touch on customer case study, and I only wanted to show you one slide. So obviously this is not a very detailed view of what we're talking about here, but just to give you kind of an understanding of what it meant for a customer. And it's an enterprise customer that was looking for establishing this global wide area network connectivity with multi-cloud and cloud and multi-cloud capabilities, and obviously the support for SLAs for connectivity, high speed, low latency, fully routed capabilities, right? And integration of security services into this network, be that a network that connects branches together and branches and data centers, which is more of kind of a wide area network in a traditional sense, and also the cloud workloads, and of course the integration of the segmentation and internet breakout for SaaS connectivity and remote users for zero trust network access. And of course, and Atif, you touched on that, and couldn't agree more with you. The scale and high availability that is something that many people take for table stakes, but it's not, right? And an ability to deliver this scale on demand and high availability is something that you only start appreciating when you run out of it, right? It's like when you don't have capacity, all of a sudden you start scrambling. When your circuit goes down and you don't have redundancy on access, or somewhere in the core something fails and your provider reroutes things, and all of a sudden you see spike in latency. So you start really appreciating those things only when they happen, right? And the cornerstones were, we don't want any new hardware, right? We just want to keep on leveraging our existing hardware. We don't want to, complicated hop by hop configurations. We want to get away with physical co-locations, data center traffic backhauling, all of these things. We want to keep them in the past. And that customer really kind of by leveraging this notion of the cloud backbone and what we call in Alkira network cloud, really kind of brought them into leveraging all the advantages we've been talking about. All right, I think we're getting to the end of it, right? And hopefully that was very insightful. We really invite you guys to take the next step and go to alkira.com. There's plenty of information out there. We invite you to sign up for a demo. It's very insightful, very revealing, very shocking, I would say, of what you can do in a matter of minutes and how this network sort of comes alive. Just you clicking buttons and moving things around on a canvas and then just deploying a provision button, and this network all of a sudden kind of comes to life. It's really groundbreakingly different from anything that we people have seen before, and IT organizations have really been exposed to, right? I think Atif, you yourself have done quite a few of those demos, so you kind of know firsthand. The customer reaction is like, whoa, like, okay, how does that happen? Some people don't believe this, right? It's like, is this real? Like, is this like, are you playing? Is this a game, right? Is this a real product? Because it just almost seems, too simple, like impossible that all of this complexity across sites and clouds and internet breakout points and security enforcement and the visibility, all of that, all of a sudden, kind of in your fingertips. That's something that is kind of hard for some folks to even grasp, coming from their kind of a daily mundane routines around wide area networking clouds. I bet something you've seen quite a few times.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we want to thank everybody, and I especially want to thank Atif. Thank you very much for for joining and providing all the insight, and thank you to Ashley and the SDX Central team for hosting both of us. So with that, I'll say have a great day, and thank you for attending.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you for joining us today, and a special thanks to both Atif and David for taking the time to discuss the need for evolution in cloud networking. This webinar will be uploaded to SDX Central for on-demand watching shortly. You will receive an email when it is live on the site. Once again, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us, and a special thank you to Alkira's Atif and David.